Welcome, listeners, to this Speaking from Our Hearts podcast episode, where I am absolutely delighted to be having a conversation with a lady from Switzerland, Simone Anliker. And Simone today is chosen a very, very interesting title, and it's called Listening and Speaking from Our Hearts. So, Simone, a very, very warm welcome to you.
Thank you very much for having me here.
Excellent.
Really
So,
happy to be
right,
here.
listening and speaking from our hearts, Simone. Tell us more, please.
Yes, that's. I'm really passionate about this because it's so much helping myself to connect with myself inside of me and to really deeply, truly listening to the person I'm with. So it's actually. I don't really want to call it a technique. It's a meditation practice in pairs. I learned from a dear friend of mine. His name is Robert Gonzalez, and he actually learned it from his spiritual practice. It's originated in the Enlightenment Intensive. And it's a way of being with each other in the presence of each other and truly deeply listening to each other. And also really speaking speaking your truth, speaking my truth, and being received. Yeah. And that's just a beautiful, beautiful practice. I'm, as I say, really lucky and happy that I'm feeling blessed that this came into my life.
Yeah, and you know, Simone, obviously it goes without saying that I totally understand that, because it'd be embarrassing if I didn't understand it, because I've got a podcast called Speaking from Our Heart. So, if I didn't understand, but the listening bit, I think that's so much overlooked in our world about the power of listening to each other and being present with people. And, there's a train of thought that says the most powerful words are those that are never spoken. And that really heightens the listening element, doesn't it, of being present and feeling what that person's saying and sharing that compassion of, that insight into their world.
And what I, especially in this practice, I like, it is actually a listening, not so much because I want to respond to what I'm hearing, but to be fully received, or to receive the one who is speaking fully. And that's also part of how this came alive. Charles Berner, who created the Enlightenment Intensive, he has one of these saying. He says, when we are received fully, then knowledge turns into wisdom.
Yeah.
And I really like that. There is something in that. I see that inside of me when I go inside and contemplate in the presence of someone else. First of all, I have access to my inner world because there is much more presence here. It's my presence and the presence of the other person. And what the listener actually does, he's not interacting with me, which we normally do in conversation, kind of this nodding and this smiling and this confirming. So the idea of having someone who is present with me is more just having the pure essence of presence instead of having the interaction. And that by itself causes something inside of me that I can deeply go inside and connect with my inner wisdom. So for me, this is like the purest art of contemplation I ever experienced, because I get access to I become my own guru. It's not about learning from out there, but it's learning from inside out. And then what's also so powerful, I speak it out. Yeah. Many people that meditate in their own inner world, but then there's something bringing this into the space between us. and it's being received in that space. That makes it so powerful. That's, in my understanding, when knowledge, inner knowing, turns into wisdom.
Wow. Wow.
Mm-hmm.
You talk about nonviolent communication, Simone. Give us some insight into, what do you really mean by that?
I'm part of my background. I used to be a lawyer, and years ago I got introduced to nonviolent communication by Dr. Marshall Rosenberg. And at that time, when I got introduced to it, I thought, oh my goodness, I have many years of spiritual practice in my back. And when I got introduced to nonviolent communication, I had a sense that here, finally, someone gives me the how to do.
Right, okay.
And the how to do is with I would say, a simple way of trying to observe, not to judge, really being connected with your feelings, with your sensations, connect with your needs, which is by itself needs a little bit of explanation. I would call it my heart's yearning, my deepest longing, which actually I am myself. I call needs today because I am more evolving into the spiritual side of nonviolent communication, which actually Marshall Rosenberg in his later years also said, the basis of all what I do is spirituality. He didn't name that in the beginning. And so the nonviolent communication, how it's taught today, in many ways, it's more taught as a communication model, but actually, at its core, it's an awareness practice. So talking about needs as soul qualities, which actually it's me, it's myself. When I talk about love, when I talk about freedom, that's something that is me, speaking from that. And then also having a way of interacting with someone else. It normally helps to connect, to see where are you, what are your heart's longing, what is the soul quality that wants to live through you. And that's actually not different than mine. So on the level of needs, we really can connect. And from there, we try to find something that is helpful for the two of us. So when it comes to bringing this into daily life, bringing this into action, then the best way is that your needs and my needs are being considered in that. Your quality, you as your whole being, me as my whole being is seen. And then let's find ways where we can be ourselves. Yeah. So what I'm expressing is much more my understanding of a spiritual approach to it, that meeting my needs actually is a way of expressing who I am, and at the same time also giving you the space to express who you are, and meeting on that level.
And that's a lovely way to put it, Simone, because how I interpret that is actually a dance of two energies, just embracing, and you imagine in the physical sense two people dancing. Well, this is the same thing, only on an energetic, vibrational way, isn't it? And that's what I've learned, and that's why when I did some sort of background research around your nonviolent communication, everything lit up in me, because my background from a very early age was violence. Mm-hmm. And I've made that transformation from that very violent, that very sort of ego-driven survival, raw way of being, to this much more powerful way of being. And sometimes when I revisit, guys and girls that I've grown up with, that from my past. And they've not made this transition. They don't understand, the label that they now give me is I'm soft and I'm fluffy and I've lost touch with reality. And my assertion on that is very simple. No, before I wasn't real, but now I am. That is for me the blatant reality for this kind of more spiritual, faith driven. And I personally, Simone, use the word faith in not necessarily in a religious context, because there is no right and there is no wrong. I think that's our most intimate and personal relationship for all of us. I believe that. So I'm certainly not decrying religion, but for me it is around this faith of things like letting go and this dancing that we're talking about, and this energy and this mutuality, and sharing this positive vibe into the world that will change the world. But that change comes from within first, and then we emit that. And as I say, I think what's even more powerful is when two people keep exchanging that compounds and grows, and that vibrational effect out into the world, I believe is monumental. And that will, in terms to bring it back to the non-violent communication, my perception of that, Simone, is that will change the world, because I think the world is now radically crying out for change.
I think, that's so true what you say, because as you say, you have been grown up in a violent environment, and there, in my understanding, just being human at that time, at this time, here on this planet, and with all what we have gone through, I have a sense that we all have experienced in some way violence, or I call it also trauma. And when my understanding is, and that's, I'm speaking here also just to be also transparent, that doesn't mean that I'm always nonviolent. When I'm triggered, when I fall into survival or stress mode, it's just very natural that I go into this fight and flight and wanting to be right. And especially this wanting to be right becomes so strong, because I think that's so true. Once I heard Eckhart Tolle say, when we have this, I want to be right, and that's very often connected with blaming the outer for not feeling good, and I know how it's supposed to be, and then expecting this to be like this. And he said something that rings so true for me. Whenever I want to be right, at the core of it, it is always about me having the right to live. That is on the very deep level activated. And when that in some way is threatened, and it doesn't even make sense maybe to the outer, but my system experiences something like this. This is a threatening situation. I go into this fight and flight reaction, and then having techniques or having tools that helps me to get out of this state, to reflect and respond instead of react.
Yeah.
That is something, and that's learnable. We can learn this. And I think the earlier in age we learn how to deal with those situations, being human, being on this planet, it's just, there's always situations that come up. But how can I respond differently to my own inner reactions and to reactions to other self? And I love it in the English. Respond is very much connected with responsibility.
Yeah.
So for me, taking responsibility for my feeling state, for what's happening inside of me in relationship to what's out there, that's actually empowering.
Yeah.
How do I respond to my reactivity? Can I be self-compassion? Can I be open-hearted towards myself? And can I open my heart towards myself and then again towards the other person?
Yeah, it's interesting, Simone. Only this morning I was listening to Wayne Dyer. He's done an interpretation of the Tao Te Ching, the 81 verses, and I think it was verse 17 I was listening to this morning around enlightened leadership, and it was exactly it embraced what you've just said there about, whatever's going off out there. I'm kind of not responsible for that. The only thing I'm responsible for is what's going off in here. And we do have choices around that.
Mm-hmm. And I really like that you mentioned Wayne Dyer. Wayne Dyer for me is really one of my spiritual teachers. And I still experience his guidance. I like the fact that he and me, we have the same date of May 10th is our birthday. So wow. I feel even connected with him through that. And I know that he, from reading that he was very deeply touched by an encounter with Viktor Frankl when he was in Vienna. And Viktor Frankl, in my trainings, when I start the training, I very often quote Viktor Frankl with, he had this saying that between the stimulus and my reaction or response, there is that space. And it's that space in where I have where in that lies my freedom, because I can choose. It's the freedom to choose. And I had a long time, I thought, I have to try to change there is a stimulus, and then I want to change my reaction to that. And then I realized that's probably really takes a lot of time, because of this old brain and reactivity and stress and survival response. And then I realized maybe it's not so much about changing my first reaction to it, but then how do I respond to my reaction?
Yeah.
And in that lies my freedom, because I see I might get angry again, I might get reactive, but then can I step back and see and look at this and then ponder on this and change this one, how I treat myself, how I treat the other? Am I able to, when things happen, am I able to then go back into conversation with you after I have checked, where am I coming from? What is my heart's longing? Why am I reacting like this? And what is it that I would like to see different? So this, how do I respond to my reactivity, actually creates that space in which I am free to choose.
I want to dig a bit deeper, Simone, if I can, around that word awareness. The very first podcast, and I can't, listeners yet again must be sort of, blimey, Paul, you really do keep going on about this ABC. But the very first podcast I did, Simone, was Mastering Life is as simple as ABC. And for me, it kind of wraps up or is encompassed within what we're speaking about now, because the A is awareness. And I think we've kind of danced with this awareness quite a bit. The B is our beliefs. And so for me, the beliefs is something that, as a mentor, Simone, that I really focus on with people. And if those beliefs are not serving somebody, then let's dig down and let's dismantle them. And then the C.
Before you go to the C, I would like, if you allow me, to add something, because it's really, coming back to the diets, one of my deep insights recently, being in a diet, and we were contemplating on commitment to freedom or commitment to truth. And what came up for me is in the belief. I heard my inner teacher talk to me and said, "Are you willing?" And I heard my inner disciple say, "Yes, but I don't know how." And that's where the belief comes in. And then I had this realization, it's good enough to, or then the answer came, just belief or willingness is the beginning. And it's the initiation. It's the first step.
Yeah.
Do you believe? Are you willing? And then, of course, it's the stepping into the unknown. It's, I don't know, because if I would know, I wouldn't have to believe, then I would know. So it's that, are you willing to go towards that? Do you believe? Do you trust? Do you have faith to go towards that? And then it's always a surrender and stepping into the unknown.
Yeah.
And that was...
So to go on to the C then, Simone, that's the creativity.
I like that. And it reminds me of so much, talking about Wayne Dyer. He has this saying, I think he even had it from some of his teachers. If you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. And it brings it back to me being responsible for it. If I don't like it, then I have the power to change it. And I think that's the awakening. That's where we get more and more into that. We take this responsibility and we can see that we are, and that brings me back to what you said. That's the creative force inside of us. We have that. It doesn't mean it's easy. And it is there in us. And I really have a sense that we do receive, because it's, the layers are getting thinner and thinner, and we do receive also the help when we are willing to step aside and let help come through. And so like this surrendering to listen inside of me, to connect, to see what helps me to open up my heart again and again, when I'm closing down to what is helpful to me, to open up my, are you willing? You don't know exactly how to do, but are you willing? It's almost like this first step, do one step and I will do 10 for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And that brings in as well, if I can go back to this contrasting choice we have, and it is a choice between this new love, in my context, relatively new love way of being, versus that old way of being, survival, existence, call it what you will, that was based totally on fear. Totally on fear. And I know things are within the personal development movement generally portrayed as a choice between love and fear. And I think in its most simplistic form, it is. And we do have that choice. We kind of sit in the middle. So which way am I going to go? Am I going to go that way towards fear? Am I going to go that way? And when I, become embroiled in these conversations around, how much I've changed, if you like, and my answer is very simple, Simone. I've changed because the choice was easy. To live a life of addiction, despair, darkness, where you're living off your nerves and you're just so, you're ill, you're toxic. I was anyway. And that there has to be a better way. And that was what started a voyage of discovery for me. And the more I learned to let go and trust, which is faith, the more that I found that this other way of being, which we'll call love, it's not even a comparison or a competition, because the softness and the gentleness and the divine femininity that Wayne Dyer refers to, it's powerful. And in terms of that divine femininity, I made perfect sense of that quite easily, because when I looked personally from a human and even an ego point of view, Simone, I was able to make very, very strong sense of that, because reflecting back upon my journey as a child, the most powerful and positive influences in my life had been from feminine energy. My mother, my grandmother, the girlfriends that was in my life, the amazing women that came into my life thereafter, that beautiful, beautiful, powerful feminine energy. So for me, that is, when people talk about choices, oh, well, yeah, it's okay for you, you've got it all sorted. No, I haven't. I had a choice to make, the same as we've all got a choice to make. And I suppose my parting message, Simone, and obviously I'll invite you in for your parting message in a moment, but mine would be, it is a choice. So choose wisely, but remember, there's only really ever one choice. So from your own point of view, Simone, in terms of a parting message, one sort of real powerful knockout statement, or call it what you will, what would that be?
Well, I mean, there's so many. What would that one be? I really sense we live in such a great time that we have, I sense this help that we get as we are more connecting to who we really truly are, and being able to step aside and have, for me, it's a lot with surrender, that loving, becoming that loving channel to bring, let the love who we are flow into this world. And actually, there's so many beautiful things that support us in that. And what works for me might not work for someone else, but there is definitely something out there that works for each one of us. And just to share what works for me, I think that's also that calling to spread what works for me, because maybe I can reach other people who are in a place that they are looking, or they're I call more longing for something that is touching them. And so the way I do is my spiritual NVC and this diet work, which I which I make available to, it's for free, which I make available to people to really deeply connect with their inner originally it's called the Diet Inquiry Project, guidance from within, to really deeply listening. And I think that's the new really cool thing. We can do this in community. It's not anymore that we are sitting at home and doing our meditations just in our own secluded place. But I think this is the cool thing, that we can do this with other people. We have the internet, I call this the internet beings. They're supporting us right now because there is something that helps us to connect. And using this technology, I know a lot of people are still afraid of going online and using the technology, not knowing. But it's so supportive to do this together, being together in one's presence and being there for each other. And then whatever is supportive to you. I do it through my diet work. I do it through my spiritual NVC, through my retreats. And there's so many other things. So just, I think just do it. Just do it.
Just do it. Yeah, 3 simple but very, very, very powerful words. Just do it. And I think the simplicity, because for people that may say, well, it's all this, I don't know where to start, because people talk about meditations and they talk about the holistic medicine, and they talk about alternative therapies, and it's all so confusing. And I think the simple answer to that, Simone, is just align yourself with somebody that you feel good with, that somebody that has got that spiritual, that, you know, that, dare I say, that greater spiritual level, a higher level of awareness, and hang on to their coattails, because they're excellent guides and excellent teachers. Their truth won't be your truth, but having that holding your hand along those first steps, I think, are very, very crucial, and make life, you know, a life of discovery. And to use that helicopter analogy, go into new fields and conquer new levels of discovery. I think those first steps are all important, and that's why it's important to reach out to, you know, to discover your higher self. And so on that note of reaching out, Simone, how can people get in touch with you, find out more about you, connect with you?
I have two websites. One is the diadinquiry.org. That's just a landing page, a sign-up page. So people who would like to get on the mailing list, that they can just sign up there, and it's for free. Then they get the invitation on a weekly basis. There are WhatsApp groups, but they will get the information once they have signed up to that. And who is more interested in the spiritual nonviolent communication, there is my other website, www.compassion/voice.ch. It's in German, because I'm based here in Switzerland, but there is a button to translate. If you have problems, hopefully in the couple of months, I have just a proper English version of that. It's just work in progress. But if you're interested, and there is upcoming events one is going to be a beautiful event in Bali in September, where we do diet work on the basis of spiritual nonviolent communication. It's about restoring, about resting. I work together with other two trainers, Anna Groves and Rob Ten Broek from New Zealand. So it's going to be an international gathering. And so if people want to be updated, just sign up to the newsletter. I will send that out, and then keep them posted what's wonderful going to happen in the next couple of months.
Beautiful. Your contact details, Simone, will be in the show notes, so listeners can, if they've not managed to capture it here and now, that's fine. They will be in the show notes. So wow, where do we go from here? Where do we go from here? Simone, thank you for those shares and those insights, those very powerful insights. And you know, we kind of started, or I started hosting this particular episode by alluding to that word, that violence, that darkness, and that destruction and that despair that we all feel. And so, you know, there's a personal gratitude element from me in terms of what you've shared, because I know that what you're talking about works, and not only just does it work, it works dramatically, powerfully.
Mm-hmm.
So
that's actually really also my experience, that when things are really not going well at all, when I'm able to truly listen and connect, when nothing works, there might be a chance that this way of communicating with each other is like a good way to try. And even if it not always solves the problem, but at least I can go differently out of a conflict, because it feels kind of good for myself, and I'm not hitting myself, and I'm compassionate around this, and that by in itself be nice to myself in that, if not for the two of us. So it's really, really it's something I really cherish, and I love to bring into the world. And I want to actually just use the last sentence, I hope that's okay. Otherwise, you
Yeah,
can cut it
fine,
out.
absolutely.
I would love to say also thank you to the ETTG, the European Transformational Teachers Gathering, and to Steinar, because that's how we met. I
Yeah.
wouldn't have known about you. You wouldn't have known about me if we wouldn't have had this platform to meet there. And that's just that beautiful gathering of like-hearted, I call it like-hearted light workers, where I so deeply enjoyed not being in competition with each other. So that's the new thing, but just really being cooperative and supporting each other. And just this huge, big gratitude to Steinar Ditlevsen, who organized this, and all of the people who have been there, who I've met. So I'm really grateful for that, to have met. And it was on my mind movie to work together with light workers more. And so it's manifesting already. So I'm really grateful.
Wow.
And thank you so much. And I'm so happy for you, what you're doing, bringing the world out, connecting with people and helping people to spread their word. So thank you, Paul, to you. Really big thank you to you.
And on that note, I think it's all about, and going back to the title, about listening and speaking from our hearts.